When everything in your life starts to collapse, when everybody that you thought really loved you, and when your dreams and aspirations suddenly slip out of your hands, you start to fall into a dark place, into this insolid void that is almost undescribable. Depression is a very harsh condition, and it's a reality that almost everybody will face during their lifetime. We all know the symptoms. You feel hopeless, miserable, in anguish, but what if the symptoms would manifest themselves externally? There is this movie called Thanatomorphose, and this movie is a dark descent into depression. It gives us an insight on how miserable and cruel this condition can really be. Fortunately, it doesn't manifest like this in real life, but it can feel like it. It can feel like you're decomposing away. We will take a deep dive, we will make an analysis, and a summary on this movie that honestly is one of a few. I have never seen a movie like this again, and I think it contains a lot of valuable lessons, and we all can learn something about our inner emotions with this one. Just before getting into the summary, I would like to introduce myself. So hi, I'm the band, Slaughter, and remember that I'm your favorite rock star, of course, hehe. And if you would like to help me, support me, you can either help me on Fiverr by hiring me as your editor, if you would like to, of course, or you can send me a small donation via PayPal. Nothing that will affect you, and that will really help me because, it's a struggle out here. So, with that out of the question, we can now go ahead into the summary of Thanatomorphose. The movie starts rather simplistic. Laura was having intercourse with her boyfriend. Once concluded, and wandering around the house, he told her with a dry no that he wasn't going to stay for the night, after which he stepped on a nail and Laura cured his foot. A few moments later, we just see him getting dressed and leaving, action that led Laura to noticing a bruise on her shoulder. After she walked with no direction on the house, she started her hobby, her artistic purpose, which is a sculpture that always gets postponed for another day. We noticed something that started being wrong with her. Her hair started to fall in chunks out of nowhere. Next day, when she was taking a bath, she lost a nail on the shower. But after realizing there was nothing she could do, she started preparing herself for her day. After breakfast and putting on her uniform, which we could assume she's a nurse, dentist assistant, or something similar, she left the house. And once she came back, grim news. As she read the letter, letting her know that the art committee rejected her scholarship.
On behalf of our committee, we regret to inform you.
Her friends arrived home, and it was a mini party, a regular gathering. Everybody was curious about Laura's sculpture, to which she replied that it was postponed. It wasn't long before one of her friends noticed that she had a small bruise on her chin, and when she asked about it, she said that she genuinely didn't know what happened with it, because there was a dark reality here. We don't even know what is happening to her. But of course, as she has a very horrible boyfriend, or at least he was depicted as one horrible boyfriend in the movie, he just continued to say that he wasn't on his right senses when he slapped her, which caused sort of a mini altercation. Well, in reality it wasn't an altercation. Lara just brushed it off and went into the kitchen, which she was followed by another character, which, if I remember correctly, his name is Julian. I hope. He's like sort of this nice guy who told her that she deserves better, that she should leave him, but He just seems that he just desires her body, that he don't desire to save her at all, and after that, Laura just leaves the kitchen. After the friends left, Laura's boyfriend stayed at home, and after a discussion that led to a physical altercation that also led to intercourse, he told her that she was very wet. But I will give you a grim spoiler. It wasn't fluids, it was blood. Laura was already starting to decompose. It was midnight, probably a little later. Laura was reflecting on herself, saying,
It's all pointless. It doesn't matter. I just can't do it anymore.
and she said that she quit sculpting, but he replied with silence. After a few moments, she puked on him. On the mid of the darkness, we saw that she was full of bruises, and in a harsher state than previous days. Next morning, she recurred to autumn medication. Wandering in the house, she tried drinking from the sink, but someone was knocking at the door. The sink filled itself with blood, and she got scared of this, slipped on the floor and hit her head. A few hours, when she woke up, she mended her wounds, and this time they were knocking again. When she opened, Julian entered, and he wanted to take her to the hospital, but she only wanted to be with him. After a fellatio, he fled the house, and she collapsed to the floor. Next morning, when she woke up, she was full of bruises, and even when she took a bath, she just realized that she just couldn't wash this off anymore. Well, in reality, she never could, and that's an inescapable reality of this movie, that we just see her decay further and further with each day. She tried to have a glimpse of normality into her life again. She put on makeup, she did her hair as regular, but the reality is that she couldn't cover it anymore. And due to her frustration, she smashed the mirror on the bathroom, which in turn caused her an injury in her hand. She also checked her head wound just to realize that it was now soft, and she could insert her fingers into it, which, if you didn't know, is not normal, definitely. After that day, she was covered in worms, and someone was knocking at the door, so she covered the windows, and when looking into the mirror, she was empty. She had nothing else to say, so she just covered it. By accident, throwing a hammer into her foot, then mending it in the bathroom. When working on her sculpture, she lost a finger and then a teeth, to which she started drinking. Then she was picturing all the parts she lost. Stephen came back into the house. Stephen is her boyfriend, if I forgot to mention it. He saw her, but she only had one desire, self-satisfaction. He rejected her, so she decided to end him. We see how she composed herself with duct tape. She stapled her skin. She tried to bring certain level of normalcy to her. She tried to cure her, but everything that she did, every attempt that she took, was just postponing the inevitable. On the very last chapter, our final character, do you remember the one that followed her into the kitchen, the one that had a sort of non-consensual scene with her? Well, he arrived home because he received a call from Laura asking for help. When he arrived to the house, he just realized that it had a putrid smell. He entered the room where she was lying, and he realized the condition that she was in, and this time it was worse than ever before. He tried to help her. He lent a hand to her, but she was so decomposed that his hand just slipped right off, and he needed to take some air. So Laura woke up the bed, and she asked her directly if he still finds her attractive, which at this point we know that Laura is definitely not on her right senses right now. He told her directly that she was disgusting, and after a brief altercation, she proceeded to end his life. Now, once she realized the mistake, once she realized that she ended the life of the last person that cared and that was going to save her, she started crying on top of him. Laura continued working on the sculpture. She added pieces of her to it, but it just fell to the floor, thus rendering this reaction. After solitude, angerment, reflection, she looked at herself in the mirror, and she realized that her eyes were also gone. After one last bath, she decided to leave the apartment. However, to do her decomposition, she could only drag herself on the floor, stumbling near the corpses of the people who once loved her. When she arrived almost to the door, her body collapsed on a last shivering, horrid scream. And there lays Laura, a few feet away from being able to leap, from being able to rescue herself after being trapped in her apartment, surrounded by the bodies of the ones who once were part of her life, who once loved her. Now, this movie is extremely graphic, and it is very slow, but it paces perfectly with the history. This is not a happy history. This is a history that a lot of people will face when a dark time on their life came. In this case, we're presented with Laura, who is a person who had dreams, who had ambitions, who tried to have a certain level of normalcy to her life. Her relations weren't the best, her friends probably weren't the best, but she was fighting to have something of her life. We can definitely see that point of break on her connections, on her inner self, when she realized that the person who she was with didn't really care for her, when she realized that the dreams that she once fought for were just now void. She had nothing left on her life, and she just couldn't escape this reality of having a job that she probably didn't enjoy that much. She couldn't escape that reality, and once that letter from the committee arrived, basically rejecting her dream, she was trapped. She was trapped into this never-ending cycle of having a job that you don't like, of having a boyfriend that doesn't really loves you, or at least he tells you that he does, but he's more likely there just for companionship and intercourse because, apparently that's free in this day and age. In any case, Laura is presented as someone who had an inner fight, but who just collapses. And that's a dark reality that happens to most people. If you weren't aware, I think that Gen Z and millennials are one of the most depressed generations ever, one of the loneliest generations ever, and this movie depicts perfectly all of that. Laura isolated herself. She stopped asking for help. She even stopped caring about how her body decomposed, and she pretty clearly could see what was happening. That's the reason why she covered the mirror. But she just couldn't find a solution to it. That's why she stopped caring. That's the reason why she took refuge in self-pleasure, because that was the only thing that was bringing her comfort at that time. There's this sad reality that depression will make you isolate yourself, even knowing that you know that you have people that you can reach to, even knowing that you know that you can get out of your house and seek for help. You just cannot do it. And it's very funny that most people will tell you like, oh, just sleep out of it, or you're not really depressed, you're just distracted. No, you are depressed and your emotions are valid, and it is valid to feel horrible, it is valid to feel trapped, but it is also important to seek out a plan, to seek out a solution, because yes, you can be depressed and miserable as you want, but if you don't seek a solution to it, you will never be better. You will just be like that forever. And that's the reason why we have addiction, why people, just end themselves, or why people end up in abusive relations that are empty of any real emotion, just like, not so good things. That's the reason why, because they are incomplete. They have this huge void inside of themselves that they just learn to live with, but never really faced. And that's also another reality. If you never face your demons, they are never going to go away. And this movie is that very important lesson. Laura, even knowing that she couldn't fight anymore, she tried one last time. And even knowing that she wasn't able to reach the exit, there is an important lesson to be said. If you're going to fight for the things you need, or for the things you want, or for save yourself, you need to do it in time, because sometimes when you less realize it, it is already too late to save yourself. Now, this movie had a gruesome ending. This movie had a gruesome imagery. And even knowing the script wasn't the best, the direction wasn't the best, they did what they could with that budget, which was very little. Honestly, this is one of the best movies that I have seen, and I'm not saying that it's a good movie. I'm not saying that it's a good movie. It's not. It's slow, it has bad direction, and sometimes, it feels stagnant, that the history is stagnant and redundant. But that is the beauty of this movie. That's perfectly how depression is. Depression is stagnant, redundant, and miserable. And most times, it doesn't have an exit. The exit for this ends when you decide that it's time to take action. And, well, that's the best lesson that I will give you on depression, and that's the analysis of this movie. So, yeah, I think that's it for now. Yeah, that's it. I honestly don't have anything else to say about this movie. I think I depicted and said everything that needed to be said. So, as always, I will end this video on a high note.